7:01, and I am going to call to order this community housing board meeting. The first thing I'm just going to say is we do have a really full agenda tonight. So I'm going to give an overview after we go through the minutes, just because we're going to need to make a plan. Peter and I discussed before the meeting started that we will be taking a nap underneath the tables at 9 o'clock. So we're hoping that we'll be done by then. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the August 2nd meeting. So I know, also Catherine, thanks for getting these out so early. I feel like I looked at them in a different lifetime. Does anybody feel me?
I'll move to approve them. Probably seconds they are.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so approved. Okay, perfect. All right, so before we get started, we're going to change a couple of the items that order on the agenda. And I also just kind of want to go through what we have on the agenda tonight. So I just want to make sure that we stay really focused. We've got a bunch of like really important stuff. So we have BJ and Meg here to go through the housing chapters of the comprehensive plan to make sure that we have a good grounding in them. And we have that as the next item, but we're actually going to have David go next because his stuff is so exciting. We are going to go through, it says,
He's thrilled.
it says, it looks innocuous, it says budget update, but really David has a lot of information to share and a model put together for our potential scattered site. So that's what we're going to be doing. Then we're going to go to the comprehensive plan. So Meg and BJ can go home. We also are going to go, so it says review RFP. So I just want to be super clear that Bran and I have like a working draft of the RFP. We're going to go through it line by line just to make sure that we have everybody's input on the board. It's then going to go to legal. It's then going to go to engineering, and then it's going to come back to us and then go to the board. So I just want everybody to be really clear. This is like super working. It's been hard to get everybody to do it over email in the summer. So it's going to be kind of a working part of this meeting. I'm going to give an update on the ADU grant where we're at. Mark's going to do an update on GIS. I'm going to give an update on our fund balances, and then we're going to do some a little bit of housekeeping, but it's a lot. So we're going to stay focused. And David.
I sent you the PDF.
Yeah.
We put it
Yeah.
on here, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to read
Okay.
what I did, so.
And just to like
Turn around. Turn around. Yeah.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, this is we're working on a financial model, a feasibility model for our scattered site RFP that we're talking about. So just to remind everybody, rental units on town-owned land and figuring out how the money works. And again, thank you so much to David for putting so much work into this. We're really lucky to have you to do this. So.
This is the cover sheet. So just as a general overview, the thought being to create on 3 locales, 10 units made up of a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. Utilize a private developer to provide an RFP to do the work, to get a C of O with the winning bidder managing the properties. So I spoke to several builders and used some expense guidelines from some people who are doing similar similar types of work from a cost basis. On the rental assumptions, I used the HUD guidelines for the types of units we're describing, which are 1 and 2 bedroom units. And then as far as expenses at the property level, I'm assuming typical multifamily expense margins, which are about 70%. Profit, 30% expense. I excluded property tax on the presumption. This could be done either through a non-for-profit or some other way as to avoid that expense. I will say on the expenses, one big assumption is on insurance, which I'm sure everyone's aware, insurance costs are going up dramatically, and these may be low. So that was sort of the basis for where we are. You can go to the next slide. I just want to put some basic information on where the market is. This graph on the upper right goes back from 1970 to 2022. The yellow line is the cost to buy a home, and the blue line is the cost to rent on average in the United States. And so we've really never been at a point where there's a wider gap, hence the conversation we're talking about, that it's difficult to afford to buy. If it's difficult in general America, it's more difficult here. However, we're also at a point where materials costs have gone up dramatically. And so we're trying to build this at a time where if we'd done this in 2018, the input costs have just gone up dramatically for hard costs and soft costs for development. So we're looking at that. The expenses have just skyrocketed. This really is where we are as far as increases. You have some things like lumber, which are down 22%, which reflects sort of a softening of the market, but it's still a very expensive proposition to build. And you say things like 400 a foot to a local builder, and they laugh at you in derision. So that's just the nature of where we are. And so that's in the background of this model. So if we can go on to the next page. There are an increasing number of build to rent models out there gaining traction. And when I mean build to rent, it's a notion that it's a single family dwelling, but designed not to be owned by someone. So it has some design features in it that make it more economical to have as a rental. That may be that you have it designed for move in, move out. It's got mechanicals that might be accessed from the outside so that the tenant does not have to be home to do some of the maintenance work. You typically use fewer windows, try and use natural light as much as possible. But there are a growing design standard for this as this product has taken over or has grown. There are 22 million apartment units in the United States. There are 340,000 built to rent single family residential. So this is just starting, and we're at the forefront, and the designs sort of are just starting to evolve. So there are some concepts out there that we can buy that will be efficient from a rental perspective, where it may not be the same one you would choose to build if you were going to. Anyway, next slide. So here I just wanted to put some examples together. You can put different elevations on these types of buildings, but in essence, the most commonality of design we can get from an interior and a design basis is going to be lower cost. If we're doing 10 units, with 10 different designs that required 10 different kitchens, 10 different types of washer, dryer, 10 different refrigerators, it's only going to increase the cost. So as much standardization we can have, and then perhaps work to change the elevations, which is more cosmetic, but can be used to not make it so institutional in nature by having same building, same building, same building. But inside and design-wise, standardization is going to allow us to do this at the lowest cost and have the lowest rent. So next slide. So the top part is really just different types of designs that I found in the build for rent world. And then focused in on the two types we're looking at, which are, one bedroom cottages of about, and then two bedrooms. Functionally, those could be the same building, it's only got a wall in the middle. So at the end of the day, we have 5 structures with 10 units. The total square footage is 5,300 square feet. I work with some local builders and some national builders to try and get an estimate of where the general costs are, and have tried to approximate what market level fees we could get. General contractor fees, for instance. They're non-for-profit developers out there who may be able to do this for less, but I've used a sort of market rate. The septic system is one place where we have unique needs, and this may be understating the actual cost because of where we are. But we also get a septic grant, which will recapture some of that. But at the end of the day, we're looking at a not very grand development at about 2.8 million or $544 a foot. On the next slide. So using the HUD guidelines for what kind of rent you can charge, and this assumes 100% occupancy with no vacancy factor. Our gross potential rent is $214,000. I put a property management fee in of 5% of rent. Insurance at $6,000 per structure. Maintenance fee, just assuming a reserve pretty much, because on a new build, we'll probably have a lot of this under warranty, but every 15 years, you're gonna have to replace a roof. So you're gonna need some type of reserve. And, other expenses, snow removal, kitchen sink breaks, there's gonna be some expenses associated with it. So you end up with, this is about a 72% margin, which would be great if you were a public apartment REIT. You would love to have this margin, so this is pretty aggressive, which on our cost gives you a yield of 5.35%. If we go to the next slide. So then I looked at HUD financing that's out there and looked at, what are the requirements that HUD has for providing loans for this type of development. And the good news is that, they're out there, they're fairly cheap. A jumbo mortgage of a similar size would be at least 100 basis points higher than this. So using a 6.7% interest rate, which is sort of in the middle, they require a fairly low debt service coverage ratio. And I just worked to come up with a maximizing the mortgage amount of 1.7 million, such that we have a debt service coverage that would exceed the HUD mandate. So that still would require the private investor to put in $1 million. They'd be looking at an annual payment of $128,000 a year in mortgage expense. And so from a cash flow perspective for the investor who's developed these 10 units, it's 2.26%. And obviously we're in a world where you can buy a 5-year treasury and take no risk and earn substantially higher than that. But this is without, any sort of adjustments or grants or what have yous, but purely from a market rate estimate of what I think the returns would be for somebody if they wanted to take this project on. And I think that's it.
This is, so I mean, this is like, do you want to go through this, David, or?
Well, if you want to talk through it.
Yeah, I can talk about it. So, I mean, I think the big picture is, there's a lot of things that we can do, but for me, getting to that, was it like the 2 point whatever ROI is like, that tells me that we need to think about alternate money sources. So one of the things, there's a couple different ways we can kind of come at this. The one that we've talked about that we know is available to us is we have county funding at $200,000 a unit, which would be put 2 million into this potentially, which dramatically changes the math. You can change the aesthetics. You could cover a really expansive sewer. You know what I mean? Like it changes the economics. But what I really walked away from this model understanding is that we're going to need to do something additionally, that this as it stands without either going for bundling in for, we talked about like LIHTC credits for, maybe a developer pushing it in with another project, or county funding, or potentially having the town come in with some money. We're going to need additional funding. This isn't going to stand by itself. We're going to need it's close, but it's not going to be an attractive project for someone to come out. So that was one of the things I really wanted you guys to hear. And the other kind of piece of, and again, there's all sorts of different ways we can look at it. We can kind of explore LIHTC credits as usually, my understanding, maybe we can dig into it a little bit more, go to slightly larger developments. Maybe we could get bundled in with something. The county funding seems pretty low-hanging fruit. They have reached out to us. The challenge with that is it requires a minimum unit size of 10 units. So if we, for some reason, we're not able to get to that 10 units, we've got to kind of come back to the drawing board to move this forward financially. So either the town would have to come in, or we'd have to have some kind of, there's the money doesn't, we're going to need another funding source. I think that's just, if your only takeaway is that we need to work on that a little bit further, it's really important. And we need to be considering that in tandem with the actual RFP, because if the money doesn't work, it doesn't matter how beautiful the RFP is. We're going to need to bring in another funding source.
Well, we need to get to those 10 units.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands,
That's
or
what I was
buts.
gonna say,
Yeah.
all about
And I think if we go with Suffolk County Health Department and say, hey, one hand is giving us $2 million, we need you to approve.
Yeah.
You need to squeeze them in to get the 10 units. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing the good news is the 10 units that we're talking about, which is the 6 1-bedrooms on South Ferry, 2 at North Ferry, and I know this is a hotly contested site, but 2 at Manwaring, that we can have that as of right. So the thing that goofed us up, why we had to kind of think of 3 sites, was because we thought we were going to be able to get to 8 at South Ferry, and they said no.
Definitely no.
Well, preliminary, obviously we're not all the way through the process because we don't, but we preliminarily went to Suffolk Health and they're like, No. So I don't, Matt Sherman doesn't seem to think that there's a lot of wiggle room without like public water or sewer, like without some extraordinary measures. It doesn't seem like we're gonna, six one bedrooms is the max that we could put on there. If we moved to 2 bedrooms, it would be even less units, which is why we're thinking to do the 6 one bedrooms there, because the other 2 lots could support two bedrooms, and I think.
Well, it goes by bedrooms, it doesn't go by kitchens and baths, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you can kind of mix them up.
well,
To the
you can do the 2,
4 one-bedrooms on another property.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was like the maximum yield we could get out of those, which as far as we understood, and I know you looked at some of the properties, that it's our understanding that those are the only current vacant town-owned lots that that are basically zoned to be
Yeah.
able to do this. So I also know that brings up a bunch of stuff, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there like right now, that if we are not able to get to that amount of units, that we really need to go back to the drawing board on the financial piece. The LIHTC credits are a lot more complicated. And again, just as like the county has come to us to make sure that we understand that we can use this funding. So for me, that seems 2 million in low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So that would be like the first thing.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to thank you for the hard work. It's fantastic. It's really, really impressive. I never understand anything about what you said, except you did explain it very well. So I'm very impressed. Thank you so much. The second thing is that what I am coming away with this is that if we could set a goal, if we can say, commit to ourselves to commit and go to the town board and say, we would like 10 units, and this is what the process will be, and this is how long it will take. Because what I'm hearing is I would hate for all of this work to be done and then to have us go back to square one and say, oh, well, we're only gonna do 6, or we're only gonna do 4, or, because then I don't know.
Well, I think you're making a great point, because if you start going down and say, well, you can't, it's 6 or 4.
Right.
The problem is once you say it's not feasible from, right, no rational person, unless it's charity,
Right.
would do this.
Correct.
Right.
Then you start going into things where you're getting grants from agencies, and those agencies expect reporting.
Correct.
There's oversight expectations. You're taking on risk to yourself that you have to check everybody's income records, that they're meeting the required qualifications. So unless you can have scale in some form,
Yes.
there is nobody who wants to manage 10 rental units, make sure that everybody meets the income verification tests, because if they don't, the impact is on them, not the tenants.
Yeah.
And so I think it has to be of a scale to make it worth somebody's while to take
Exactly.
on those.
But that's,
onerous.
I think what I'm trying to say is that if we could make, I mean, again, we're in a preliminary stage, but
Yeah.
already to put on the ground the idea that 10 units is what we are going for, and we're talking, this isn't gonna happen in 2 years. But if we could say to ourselves, this is what we would like, and this is what we are working towards, then I feel like we have something very concrete that we can go to the town board with and to the community and say, this is what we've got going. And this is what we understand we can do, because otherwise what's gonna happen is somebody's gonna come in and say 10 is too much, and then we're gonna go right back to what you said, which is then it's gonna be 8, then it's gonna be 6, then maybe 4, and then we'll never have anybody wanna come in and do anything. And we'll be right back where we've been for the last 20 years.
So we have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So like I said, I just want to make sure, before we're gonna move on to, we're doing a little out of order because I don't want to like hold Meg and BJ up all night. But I really wanted you to kind of hear that. Does anybody have any questions specifically? We're gonna go through the draft RFP We're all gonna give feedback and we're gonna kick it out to legal and anyway, we're versioning. But does anybody have any specific questions on the financial model right now?
No.
Okay,
Any way to include the possible potential income stream from the transfer tax in your analysis?
Calculations.
well, you saying
0.5%.
to put it back, well, so you're saying to put it back in? Well, here's the tricky part, I'm just gonna speak to that, is tell me what real estate sales are gonna be like in 3 years.
There've been two very big ones.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think it's a little tricky.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could use that as a funding source if you bonded against it.
That's not, and then lower the rate maybe by a full percent.
You could, potentially, I don't know, but obviously that's a big undertaking. And, you know, again, for me, it's just like, if the county wants to give us $2 million, then we could in 10 years, we let that grow and we could do low interest loans, we could do something else with, you know, I'm just like, once you use it, then you're in it. So anyway, there's a bunch of ways of thinking about it, but, Brad, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna move to the comprehensive plan chapters, and then we're gonna go to the RFP, we're gonna bounce around a little bit.
On the one sale that just went through, 65,000 should be being dumped into that account.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got the fund, we're gonna go through the fund balances.
What did somebody pay?
Anyway,
13.1.
yeah,
Let's start it.
Yeah.
okay. All right, all right. We've got a full agenda, so,
I agree.
yeah.
Maybe
Megan,
negative.
Yeah, right, I think I already have this.
I
didn't see
all right, you guys, we're gonna move on. Megan, BJ, do you guys wanna do your, you can do it, I don't know, I'm not, yeah.
Anybody on Zoom
Is
ask
that-
us if you can hear us?
Part of that, is that?
That's that sale, yeah.
Okay.
Alright.
I didn't think that had hit.
All right. All right. Also,
Good.
I also want to say thank you guys for coming and spending your Thursday night.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
I know that you,
That we're too tired.
You have other lives.
you're exhausted and
Yeah.
probably tired of talking about this comprehensive plan,
So
but
I just want to start with some of the soft stuff that's not in the chapter per se, but in the early chapters.
yeah,
Soft is maybe not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Feel good stuff.
yeah,
So in the vision chapter, we have 4 guiding principles. One of them is maintain a vibrant year-round island community that meets residents' economic and social needs. We recognize that growth and economic opportunities are necessary to sustain a year-round island community, but this should not come at the expense of our natural and cultural resources. This goal is only achievable by giving due consideration to year-round employment and attainable housing opportunities, high-quality community services, and a strong public school system while maintaining low housing density in ecologically sensitive areas. And then in chapter 3, the built environment, land use and zoning, in the summary of key findings at the beginning. Here's a key finding for housing. Land conservation has been highly effective at protecting more than a third of the island, but it comes with its own challenges. Preservation of wetlands, woodlands, and other natural resources has always been an emphasis for the town and other community partners. Conservation of Neshomic, Sylvester Manor, and dozens of smaller properties has protected a significant portion of the island. However, rising land values may limit the impact of available conservation funding. At the same time, protecting open space and limiting growth can further drive up prices and restrict access to the island to all but the wealthy. The town should continue to be selective in its open space preservation efforts, which it has been, but by focusing on locations of special importance because of their natural resource, visual, or historic significance. So it's again a recognition that this is a balancing act that won't end.
Right.
Okay, so Catherine, just bring up the housing, do you want to go right to the action items, Meg?
We can.
Yeah.
So with the housing, it's important to note that the housing plan that you guys all worked on and developed is part of the comprehensive plan as an appendix. So that document is included in the comprehensive plan. as a whole. So, all the recommendations that you guys have made there are all part of the comprehensive plan. And so they've kind of been reiterated in the plan itself, along with some other things. You scroll down to the action items. There you're okay. I just realized that my tired eyes are not this tiny.
That's, yeah, that's number 5. Yeah, thanks. There we go.
Okay. So all these chapters, just for everybody's information, are online. So you can see all of the comprehensive plan chapters. So this first one, goal 4.1, is to preserve the quality and character of existing single-family residential zones and other residential neighborhoods. So establish a graduated limit on the size of new homes, both knockdowns and new construction. So this is, and then it references the floor area ratio model to limit extremely large homes on smaller lots, in sensitive areas in particular.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we're looking into, and this is specifically for like residentially zoned areas. Address the issue of illegal conversions. So some of this is not necessarily like housing development, but so either make it easier for people to convert their illegal ADUs into legal ADUs, but this one is more targeting people who illegally finish spaces to avoid permits because they have a larger, so in order to avoid a special permit, you just finish it later, that kind of thing, because now you're over the square footage of habitable space.
The idea there is the limit that is established on houses, upper limit, whatever that is, it's like 6,000 square feet now. Maybe that limit becomes 8,000 square feet, but it includes everything inside the box. Unfinished basement, unfinished attic, it includes everything, so that if by chance the magic genie comes and finishes your basement, that was the maximum, that's the maximum.
That's it,
You
okay.
know, so,
Can I just ask if we have a lot size and you go and you finish your basement or you haven't materially impacted the footprint, how does a finished basement impact what you're trying to achieve?
The issue is with the permitting requirements. So if you go over 6,000 square feet right now, you're required to go through a special permitting process to get approval for that extra square footage over 6,000 square feet.
if it's finished.
But it's the definition of square foot living area is habitable space. So if your basement's unfinished, it's not considered habitable space. So you can design your house and only finish enough square footage to avoid the permit in that process, which typically requires that you then do other things to offset the size of the home or the negative impact of the larger home or the aquifer draw with the well or the wastewater treatment system. So the goal is to make it so either we can do one of two things. Either you change the definition of square footage used in the permitting process and how you calculate to see if you qualify for the permit, or you would change how square footage is calculated in general. So like the building department can either do like a gross square footage of a home and say this is the gross square footage, it exceeds this amount, so it triggers this permit. Or what they're doing now is it's square foot living area is defined by the New York State code, which is only spaces that you're actively living in. So it would, like unfinished attics wouldn't count, basements wouldn't count, garages without AC or heat don't count, but then people go in and just add AC or central air into a space and it becomes a habitable space. So it's more for the permitting and permitting factors, because then what you end up having is people who go to sell their home and they can't get a CO because there's all this illegal work done and then the new owner doesn't know, and it creates this whole
Right.
legal hot mess that just costs the town money. So if we can somehow figure out a way to prevent that from happening, kind of close that weird loophole, then it makes
You could
things
do it
cleaner.
on sort of gross potential
Exactly.
living area rather than
Exactly.
what they actually built.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And this is graduated, so I'm gonna make these numbers up, but if you have a half-acre building lot and you can meet the setbacks, so let's assume no variances are needed, but if there are half-acre lots out there, The most you'll be allowed to build, you would be allowed to build, let's just guess, 1,500 square feet. And then if you had a full acre, the most that you would be able to build there is 3,200 square feet. And, until you get to the final, it doesn't matter what you have. The maximum house is 8,000 square feet.
Right.
And that is addressing this community character issue that we've heard. Well, CPAC was the committee that helped develop this plan, that did develop this plan, is the community character, and I know this committee feels is, being impacted by the extra large houses.
Yeah, I think that the term I would use is overdevelopment.
Yeah.
Have you thought through a concept of, which I've seen in another town, that you can build your house that you want, assuming you have enough land. You can go over the limit, the offset being that you have to develop affordable as an offset.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so you can have your 20,000 square foot thing that you're never gonna use. But you have to build one of our houses as an offset.
I like that. I'm not mad at that.
It's definitely something to consider.
No. So what it's done is it's just available. So you have to go out, you're gonna build your $30 million home, and you're gonna go build an $800,000 affordable house on a different piece of property.
Right, on a lot that's available.
Right, that-
Rate and.
But it has to be affordable housing. It's not market rate rental.
No, but I mean, saying they'd have to buy that property at market rate. And
They have
build
to
it at
build at a market rate based on certain standards that the town established, and then it becomes, affordable housing. So it's,
And do they deal with maintenance in perpetuity, or would it be,
no,
Go in.
it goes into,
they wash their hands of it?
they wash their hands of it and it becomes.
Maybe
It's like the
And-
same concept of getting extra seats in a restaurant here on the island. You buy a vacant piece of property and never touch it. Yeah, that happens.
Sterilize it, yeah.
Yeah.
David, do you remember the town?
It's in Virginia, so it was Vienna, Virginia, so I'd have to
Really, they did that.
check it
So
out.
in relation to that, we have in here strengthened subdivision ordinances to require land for open space. But that can also include a, we had a set aside, a mandatory set aside. Right now it's 10%. Our recommendation was to increase that to 30% if you have a large subdivision that you're doing. And then that was for reserved space. And then we also had a right of first refusal on key lands in not-profit or public or semi-public ownership to permanently assure that the public interest is protected in event of change of ownership. I thought that we had in here that there was a fee if. Maybe it's a different action.
Was there
I'll have to look at it, because we had one where, there was a fee involved if you were doing a major subdivision and didn't do a set aside or didn't do, there was a whole structure that we were thinking of. That would either be a set aside for preservation or a set aside for community housing. And if it wasn't a land set aside, then a financial set aside to help, and it would go into the community housing fund.
Interesting.
So I have to figure out where that went, because I thought that was in that action item, maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. So the next one, strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people that they're concerned about down zoning in residential areas. They don't want it to go from 1 acre to half-acre lots. They don't want down zoning. They don't want to increase in density by, dividing already small lots. So we put this in here to establish the fact that the goal of this comprehensive plan is not to down zone, not to take the current residential zoning standards and shrink them, right? So that we can have higher density.
The important statement here is, again, very CPAC driven, the entire comprehensive plan action committee driven, as well as actually our active and vocal audience members. And here's the sentence: it is important to affirmatively state that if public sewers and water supplies are built, if they're built, residential density of existing residentially zoned areas should be maintained and should never exceed 2 units per acre, which is what we have now. You can have a house in an ADU. So again, it's sort of, that's a very strong statement for a comp plan, and just to, because some people are probably gonna need water. And don't want the, public water. Yeah, to have the opposition always, out there because they're afraid of overdevelopment.
Yeah.
That should take the clause out of that.
I mean, even in our wildest dreams, like we're looking at like 8 units on per acre, like that's,
That's what you're allowed now, yeah.
But also with that, we also have, if infrastructure is in place, like water and sewer, it may be reasonable to consider limited locations in business zones where additional housing types and densities may be appropriate.
Many times
something
mentioned
like-
out above the stores.
Yeah, like apartments above retail, things like that.
Like the new one in Heights.
Yep.
That's
Right.
going on.
Yeah.
Right. So, we don't want to eliminate that option if you have water and sewer and it's in a business area where you have walkability and things like that. So we thought it was important to keep that in, so.
Cool.
Monitor effectiveness of the short-term rental law and make necessary code adjustments to increase enforcement ability and renter safety. So this talks more towards, people illegally short-term renting and taking things out of the long-term housing market.
yeah.
And also, we passed the resolution this year to implement inspections, rental inspections, to make sure they're up to code as far as safety goes.
Right.
Because there have been tragedies in other places and we'd like to avoid that here.
And it's quite common in other areas. Someone brought up what about the liability? Well, we inspect on a regular basis buildings, and so towns are used to carrying this sort of liability, yes, but the rental, not doing the rental inspections would, to me, be a moral hazard, never mind the legal and the liability.
Well, and someone self-reporting, oh yeah, I've looked at it, it's good, but they don't really know what they're supposed to be looking for, so that's not really fair to anybody.
Well, and like in a way of thinking, it's like, it is a business, like we inspect businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did, with the ADUs, restrict, if you have an ADU on your property, we restricted that this spring to say it can't be in the short-term market. It can't be in the short-term rental market. There are gonna be a few exceptions, we understand that. But hoping that people who have ADUs now and do want to rent them, that they'll bring them into the year-round market. Not necessarily affordable, but year-round is almost as crucial.
We'll take everything, we'll take everything.
Yeah, but secure year-round housing is,
Yeah.
it's really tricky. Yes.
So then the next goal is to provide for a broader range of year-round housing options across income, household size, and age groups. So this references allowing second floor apartments above retail and business zones, B and B1. And so this would include areas like Bridge Street, the Heights, this whole 114 corridor is all B zone. So that's kind of reinforcing that idea, which was, people seem to really like in your housing plan. And when we did our virtual comp plan discussion with the public, we did like a SNAP survey. And a lot of people liked that idea of apartments above businesses. Obviously, we don't have a lot of opportunity for that, but if we don't shut the door to it, then it has to. So then some of these are carrying over from yours. Develop educational materials and resources to assist and educate homeowners in the process of developing ADUs on their property. So this is just in support of the ADU +1 grant. And, other initiatives after that.
Yeah.
Establish funding sources such as grants and low-interest loans to encourage homeowners to develop year-round accessory dwelling units. Another source of funding for these should the ADU +1 grant go away. Update the community housing plan every 5 years. It's, required in the housing plan.
Yeah.
Required here. The next goal is to create and maintain affordable and workforce housing opportunities to nourish the diversity of age and income groups that make Shelter Island's year-round population. So support creation of a Shelter Island Land Trust to assist with the acquisition and management of land for community housing. So we carried that goal over.
Which might tie in nicely with David's, you have to buy land goes into a land trust, the house gets built.
Right.
If the land in the land trust, which we saw in Southampton,
Yeah.
maintains its affordability.
Proactively identify sites and build community housing in appropriate locations. And, we listed the sites that we already have identified, the 69 North Ferry, the 12 South Ferry, and, I don't know if
Menware.
the Manwaring site is not here, but we can add it. Establish a low-interest loan program for first-time home buyers. That was something else that come up.
Just as soon as we get more money in that fund.
I know.
That was
Just a waiting game.
Yeah.
And then goal 4 is ensure that new housing construction or conversions of existing housing are sensitive to the natural environment, are of high design and build quality, and are consistent with the general scale of Shelter Island's existing housing and traditional development pattern. So ensuring development is appropriately sized in sensitive shoreline areas like the nearshore overlay. There are a lot of smaller lots in the nearshore overlay and like right on the water that people tend to overdevelop. So kind of putting a stop to that in some ways. Using the floor area ratio, if it's going by the size of the lot, then you can't exceed, certain sizes. And also the consideration of pyramid regulations. So you can't just have one huge box that goes side to side and blocks the view and light from everybody around them. And then just discouraging illegal conversions of non-habitable space into habitable space. And then there's a tree preservation law to kind of avoid clear cutting.
Yeah, in the development of property.
In the
try to be-
development of properties, so.
That was brought up by many different groups, I have to say.
That's cool. I didn't
I can't believe that town hasn't adopted that law
Yeah.
years ago
Oh,
for
yeah.
somebody who has no public water.
Identify ways to leverage development and forge public-private partnerships to achieve other community goals such as open space and community housing. So this one is strengthening the subdivision ordinance to require land for open space. I thought that set-asides in here included housing, but I'm not seeing it, so that we'll have to go back and look at. As at one point, we had discussed set-asides, like financial set-asides for housing that would go to the housing. Consider a tailored zoning approach to support Sylvester Manor's long-term housing needs. So the Manor has housing plans in the future that, won't necessarily meet with current zoning, but they're also kind of a unique situation. So having them come up with a comprehensive plan for their housing and presenting that to the board in a permitting process.
If only there was a floating zone.
Exactly.
And that's for their workers?
Yeah.
And so that's what we have in the housing chapter. That's the last recommendation.
So that's awesome.
And don't forget the whole plan.
And then,
Yeah.
and then,
For the
Yeah, well, we have like PTSD, we remember that plan.
yes. I'm living it.
Yeah, we're living.
But what we would love for you guys to do with all your free time is to check out the chapter, go through it. If you have notes, comments, things that you could add, strengthen, let us know. Because,
As usual, go to the end of the chapter, there's a comment button. That brings you right to where you need to be to
And
easily
I,
type.
and I see, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, there's a
Yes.
workshop at the Legion.
excited.
Yeah,
Yes.
first one,
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
then you reboot really.
really.
So it's from 11 to 1 in the community center above the Legion, and it's gonna start off with a presentation by BFJ Consulting, and they're gonna give kind of an overview of what they've done, how they've organized everything. And then there's gonna be about 45 minutes for people to go around and look at all the poster
We'll have
boards.
stations.
There's gonna be all these
Oh.
stations for
I
each
love
chapter.
I love a
Yeah.
station.
Yeah, we
And
love
the
a
station.
We love a station.
Visuals of all the action items, spaces for people to comment, kind of like rank what they like.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're gonna have kind of like an open hearing so that people can give us feedback. And
Right.
so that we can know if we're close to target, how far off are we, what do we need to look at and focus on? And then we'll take all that information back, and then BFJ will do another revision, and then it'll obviously go back out to the public for more comment. So that's kind of the process we're working on right now.
It goes till 4 though. I mean, the public hearing goes to whenever the public hearing, if people are done. I mean, we're not
Right.
putting an end time on that. BFJ might have to bow out, but Meg and I will be there. And then we're gonna just stay open until 4, just in case there's stragglers or people who couldn't make that other part, you know, just to see if they're interested. And then eventually, all that poster board will come into here and be hung in here for people to see and view. And of course, it's a moving target, because then as a result of that open house, some of those boards are gonna change a little bit. But,
Right.
you know, if people are aware of that, you know, that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, after the presentation, we'll have an open comment period with a set close date, so people can comment on this draft. And then that gives the consultants time to do the revision and then re-present it. So we will have everything moved in here. Some of these pictures might come down, and boards of comprehensive planning will go up. There'll be a comment box. There's also the online comments, so please, if you have the time, go through it, read your notes.
Definitely.
That's kind of, now that we have your attention.
You know, and the public's attention, those
Yes.
signs have been great in drumming up interest.
Wrong side of the issue, if you ask me, but okay. No, but people are now interested, and I think they're curious, and so hopefully this, I would like to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
Right through.
But I just think you guys have done such an amazing job at like reaching out, and I know you went to like the fire department, you came here, and like, you know what I mean, they're everywhere talking about it, and it's really cool.
I mean, at this point, we've been looking at it so long, we want to hear what everybody has to say.
Of course, yeah.
Like, we want public feedback.
Yeah,
And so we want to make sure we get all the information and feedback we can get so that, you know, each iteration is better than the last, you know? So there's no drop dead date on when this thing is going to be finished and adopted. We want to make sure we get all the feedback consistently and that it goes in the right direction.
Excellent.
Bill, you,
Yeah, a simple one for next Saturday, for the public hearing part of it. Have you considered getting a facilitator like there was for the referendum? Because otherwise you can have hijacking, you can have, it worked. It worked as a.
she was great.
She was great.
The consultants are trained in
You
facilitating.
just said they may be leaving.
Yeah.
And
But they won't leave until the hearing is done.
Because
we don't know what to expect in terms of participation. That's part of it. With the housing, we were fairly sure it was gonna be well attended.
Yeah.
This I'm not sure.
I mean, this will be, perhaps this is the one where you find out that the next one is gonna be the one that has to have a facilitator, you know, since
Yeah, we
it's the
have a-
first time you've done a public.
Yeah, and we know somebody who like,
do it,
can do it, so.
Yeah.
That's a good point though, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that worked last year and it kept things
Moving.
civil.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard me say that about 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, keeping things civil is important, and to anyone, no matter where they are on the spectrum of agree, disagree, et cetera,
Yeah.
it does, if you come off angry, you lose people. If you come off that you kind of stonewalling, you lose people. So a facilitator can help that in so many ways.
I know it sticks in people's craw, I get it, the time limit. But if there are a lot of people there,
We'll do a 3 or a 5 minute. It's just everybody has a right to be heard.
Right.
And people.
Well, facilitators that in a smoother kind
But also,
of way.
Anybody who wants to comment should never
never forget that you could make your big headline, in public and on camera, but then you can fill in the detail with a comment on the appropriate chapter or the whole
be
plan.
responsible.
Yeah, but there's people's lives involved and they have to get to them.
Gordon has a.
Speaking of time, we have a robust agenda, and
You guys, thank
I want
you.
to be, I want to be respectful of Peter and my nap schedule.
Totally fair.
And also everyone's.
Bedtime. Get up, I'd be in bed right now. About 5 o'clock in the morning.
We just had it, we just emailed it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's
It's not
okay.
quite ready for.
It's not quite,
Prime time.
no, it's real. All right, so if we're ready, we're just gonna jump right in. So just as a reminder, and Catherine, this is also you. I'm gonna try to take really good notes, but we're gonna probably need to go back to this recording to kind of put this in, so we'll know that we'll need to kind of go in. So again, this is what let's be real, Fran really worked on this, we got the bones from, you wanna talk about where this came from?
Yeah, I mean, the draft of this was something we got from East Hampton.
East Hampton, did like a bare bones
Yeah.
RFP.
So a lot of that is verbatim from them. We didn't change much. Catherine, you can go forward. Oh, actually, just the title of it, I titled it Route 114, Community Housing Development. Whatever, we should come up with something snappy for it, because,
Phase 1, community housing development.
yeah.
But snappy,
Easy.
okay, all right,
Okay, so on to page 3.
all right.
It's, I mean, you guys have had this in your emails. I don't know if we need to read the whole thing.
I'm gonna, I don't mind, I'm gonna
Okay,
go
you're
pretty
gonna go
straight, yeah, I mean, you know, all this stuff. So, I have to get close to my blind. So the thing here, I think the interesting part here that we really need to think about is proposal for firms, inclusive services in the build and ongoing management of scattered sites, development of 10 affordable units. So, you know, before we send this out, we gotta decide if we're doing 10, right? And we've listed those things out. Scope of services, the one thing that I'm gonna say, this is mostly, scope of services is mostly verbatim from East Hampton. The one thing that I'm pretty sure we're gonna get feedback on from legal is this is not as robust. And I don't know what, basically the section on the ongoing rental management, I feel like isn't as fleshed out, and I know we're gonna get feedback from council, that's fine. But we need to flesh that out a little bit more.
That actually was the one thing that stood out for me, which is that, so the way it's set up now, the only people who would develop are people who would also have to take responsibility for management.
Yeah,
But what if you have like a design firm that wants to do it? Would they then work with a specific?
There,
Yeah,
whoever
they
collects
have to
the
figure it
money,
out.
the rent money, they're managing it.
yeah, they gotta
Okay.
figure it out, because that's, as a town, it's doing
We're not
2
ready for that
RFPs is
yet.
more than what I
They
manage.
should do the partnership.
Yeah,
Town doesn't own it.
yeah.
Got it,
Yeah,
okay.
so again, we know that we're gonna need to put in some more robust legal language in here, so just so we know, known issue. I don't know how we're gonna get it marked up from council, but we'll revise from there. Again, what we're talked about, deliverables, minimum 10 residential units, 6 one-bedroom, 4 one-bedroom. I think those are all the. Okay, can you go to the next one? I'm just gonna kind of point out the stuff that Brandon and I put in there, so if you have a feeling about it. So we kind of we're initially targeting this attainable housing, 80 to 130% of area median income, defined by HUD. You know, our goal is to create as many units as we can.
Yeah.
As of right, with the possibility of.
That's a very important sentence.
Yeah, with the possibility, so this is important for any developer potentially looking at that. And again, they talked about with the possibility of increasing the total number of units in the second phase if at such a time, public water and waste treatment allow for more development. So like, for instance, like as we're talking about the 12 South Ferry site, if we were able to get public, you know, if we're able to do more as of right. And really what that just means is they need to keep in mind design-wise, that they need to like leave space on the land,
Yes.
right? The worst case scenario, you never do the second phase and you've got a lot of open space.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That's not directly related to that. For the 10-unit requirement for Suffolk County.
Yeah,
If let's say we get the 10 units.
yeah.
And post that, we come up with a couple of other properties. Does that also have to hit 10 again?
Yeah.
It does.
In order
Yeah.
to get the grant.
It's
In
the-
order to get the
Yeah, so
grant.
they won't
I mean,
even-
so they don't grandfather in that you've already.
No, here's the
Okay,
thing,
got it.
honestly, they have to do, as the nice lady at the county explained to me, it's a lot of paperwork, so it just doesn't make sense to do it. 10 is like, she wasn't even sure that you could do it for that little and had to go back and I was just like, well, we could maybe get to 10. She's like, I've never even done one that low. But that's like literally the floor of what we can do. So, area meeting, income data set. So again, we just kind of like dropped in, HUD,
Liz, I'm sorry.
yeah,
If we go out with 10 at this point,
yeah,
but during the process of either the RFP or during the building stage, something else opens up. So it's not completely new,
no.
you can't put it onto that?
And do these have to be locked in already, or could we just say the plan is phase 1, phase 2? Here's
Have to be
phase
locked
1,
in.
10, okay.
Yeah, yes,
We don't have the properties yet.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you gotta actually have a plan.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
they're
They're willing to work with us, but like, let's just say that 10 is, if we could get 10 as a stretch goal, and we're being pretty pushy and calling in favors to get them to push through. So,
That's too high for LIHTC finance.
There's, in
Yeah,
another
which is-
point, it references 60, I think, 60 to 130.
yeah, no, I realize, I think that that's just a typo.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, so that was one of the things is I don't think we're gonna make it for LIHTC because we're actually going for medium. And also, I mean, I have my other feelings about LIHTC, but that's why I think that the county financing is probably the lowest hanging fruit because for our goal is that we were talking to people in the housing plan was that 80 to 130. Because really lower than that, that's a whole different ballgame of how to help those
True.
folks.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I do think we should, but I don't know if that's what this is,
Right,
right?
right.
This is like folks just right at the brink who just need, that's what.
These are the working families idea.
Yeah, this is where
Yeah.
families. The other thing that was really important that Brandon and I put in, we thought was create a housing model that can be replicated at other locations. So again, like you said, like the repeated design, but also energy efficient, sensitive to the environment and local water quality issues, affordable in perpetuity, quality constructed, and comports with local scale and aesthetic.
Yeah,
So we like to
that was good.
flesh that out, but this is us putting that in.
I'm glad you put that in.
Yeah, let's go to the next page. Go again, go again.
I don't know how to comment on this because it seems so technical.
This is technical, so this is gonna go to engineering. So this is a
A lot
collaborative
of it's just
effort.
copy and pasting.
But this is also, all those ones I gave you about, which I think really require more conversation with Kylie, but where you want to put in requirements of proof of insurance.
Yeah,
You want to name how much insurance they need to have.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
100.
Whether you should be putting in here at this point that any contract would require indemnification, hold harmless, and defense of the town related to them. This is where I think a lot of that needs to be. And also, if there are any other environmental requirements, they need to be in this area. And we should ask them if there's any outstanding litigation or prior litigation that they've been involved with, because that could affect us. So the list I gave earlier.
Yeah, and just to be really clear, this has not gone to legal. This
No,
is
no,
our
right.
I just want to just be really clear that this is
This
us
is
sending.
the professional expertise of engineering, and it needs the legal.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear that none of that has happened, so we're gonna do another round when it comes back. I felt like this was something that we added in here, that I feel like is important for us to talk about. Amber, I know we've talked about it. So we kind of just left this in because this is what basically, East Hampton told us, we need to outline in this draft how we're gonna zone it, right? And so there's been a lot of going back and forth about how this would work. And so Brandon and I, upon like a kind of a second legal opinion, have put in the town should basically do this by a community housing floating zone that is in the community housing, I don't even remember what that piece of legislation is. Anyway, basically to do this, instead of doing a ZBA, to use the community housing floating zone that's already on the books. It's just more straightforward, and it comports with what we're trying to do here. But I just wanted to kind of point that out because there'd been discussion. Can we go to the next slide? This is
This is kind of like what you mentioned.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, I was like, I'm sure Kylie has something to say about this, so let's just see proposal.
stronger.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about mandatory requirements. So we're kind of, so again, there's, we're gonna talk, how does this work? So we get proposals. How do we, you're right, like, how do we deal with it, right? So this is some suggested language of just how they've done it in other communities, so we put it in here. I actually thought this was something really important for us to think about. We can give ideas here if you have fully formed ones, or you can chew on it and we can put some stuff in when we get the next round. Mandatory requirements selection committee will review all proposals and recommend the developer. And so we had put in that the selection committee, it made sense to be the community housing board and the town board. And we're going to also start talking about this proposal goes into how the public hearing policy and like how we weight them. So just like outlining what's important to us. So again, I would actually really encourage us as a board to kind of sit with this as it goes through legal and engineering to kind of make sure that we feel like do we have any ideas? Would we weight stuff differently for our community? So this is they're weighting it on a points system, firm qualifications and staff experience. So qualifications, local laws, so this is the firm. Can you go to the next slide?
Can I just ask, so we come up with, an RFP and we score them, and somebody that just subjectively is not right wins on points, and somebody who's objectively right, their point total's higher, right? So how do you build in at least some discretionary thing so that
It'd have to be consensus among the.
One veto per member.
well, I don't know if it's a veto, but I don't want to get sued by somebody who said, but I won.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, and I think that kind of brings to it, there's other things in that point system, and I'll just say for myself, I need to think about it more, but I would probably put in there environmental concerns. I'd probably put in a water sensitivity situation, all those kinds of issues that are particular to our community.
Yeah.
So I would try to build out the point system better so we really feel like it reflects everything. And then you're right, and again, I don't have an answer for it, but this is definitely something that we need to kind of.
I expect when Kylie looks at this, New York City and New York State have discretionary language in most of their RFPs, and that you can adapt some of that to be able to give some of that necessary discretion.
Right.
That it isn't just a pure PowerPoint total.
That's a great thing. So maybe what we should do is we can kind of send that to Kylie with a note of just be like, can you give us some language here to chew on? Selection process. So do a short list. They can send questions. We got to decide who gets the questions. Next. So did we, hold on, was there like a thing where we talked about the public, did we not put that in?
Right, no,
Okay,
makes
so
perfect.
the other part that I wanna, can we go back a slide? Cause I just wanted to point out, back up. The other part that Fran and I just didn't know how to word, so we're just gonna be super transparent. It's on here because we don't know how to word, so we do need help with the wording and also honestly, probably just thinking about what the process would be for the public hearings on this. So our idea, my initial thought would be is you kind of come to get like, do you do it with all the proposals? Do you get a short list? Do you bring those to the public? What's kind of like the iteration of going through those?
I'm gonna say we hope to have a long list. I don't think it's.
Yeah. So, but what is the process by which the public kind of gets to comment on that and give us feedback and, like, what's the, how do we do
So
that?
is this the public commenting on
The builder who we
the
pick?
builder we pick? That seems.
Yeah, no.
No.
They're gonna demand it.
I was like,
I mean, do you like, have you?
I understand that.
Hands in the pot then.
Yeah.
We'll never get anything done.
well, I think that there, right, so but here's the thing that I think the line we have to walk is, I agree, we're not gonna be able to like, every person that lives on is gonna be like, I want the shingles this color, and no, the roof's gotta be like this, like, that's never.
2 or 3 different designs of what it's gonna look like in the lobby.
Yeah.
And say,
But here's the thing is, I think
see
that.
which one people like best.
Well, the thing that's important though, is what we wanna build into this is, and maybe it's not like public comments, but what is the transparent, like, how do we be transparent as to like, what's been proposed, where we are in the process? Like, if somebody's like, I really hate vinyl, I don't know, siding, and I really feel strongly like.
I understand design, but builder is different from design, and I'm not sure.
The public shouldn't say.
I think this is where the point system is actually kind of useful, because in terms of transparency, so that you'd be able to say, look, these are the ways that we've made our assessments. And so people can say, oh, I understand the one reason that this company is better than this other company is they have expertise in X, Y, and Z. They understand they've done these kinds of projects before. So you have something objectively that you can say is a reason that this particular company is a company that we have decided we're going to go with.
They met the criteria.
They met the criteria. So that's where the point thing I think is very useful, as opposed to getting into the design stuff. I agree. That could take, God knows,
They'll
forever.
never appease.
No, you never.
Yeah.
I want to go back a half step. Because I'm now confused.
Okay.
Are you expecting the public input to be on the RFP or on the selection after the RFP?
I would say after.
If it's,
After.
that's what I thought initially, but then design is irrelevant at that point, because the design is what the builders have actually put forth in
To do it
terms
for
of
that
what
money.
they can do for that amount of money. You have a much more narrow scope of what would be part of the actual review process. Now, I'm not saying whether you should do the RFP before and let public comment be on it or not. That's above my pay grade. But I think once there is a decision, there's actually more, the public could have more input actually on the RFP, which could be rejected because you got to have a say in RFP, than they could on a selection process when everything is so much more narrow.
Well, we could have the builders say, give us 2 samples.
Yeah.
And then we put them out there.
Well, so here's,
I might be asking too much.
well, no, I mean, here's the
Go
thing.
back to your financial model. How
Well,
many-
hold on. So our expectation is that we not only would get a builder, but a kind of a prospectus of what they would do, and that would be part of how we would
Oh, no,
evaluate.
I think.
Not just like, I am ABC builder, you know?
And-
So I just wanna like, just,
And it makes tremendous sense to have as much information and transparency go out.
Right.
But at the same time, the builders, they're not gonna have a lot of leeway. That's my
But
point.
I think that if, from the community's perspective, I think they're probably more interested in the visual and
Aesthetics.
That's what it's gonna look like, that's all they care about.
And so
Right.
if you say, that if somebody comes back with a beautiful design and they're just not they don't have a balance sheet.
Yeah, they're not
Trust
yeah.
to do it, it's almost disingenuous to propose their beautiful design that the public's gonna love. And it almost seems to me that you maybe have to two-step it. And also, if I'm a builder, I'm not sure I want the public to know what my balance sheet is.
That's fair.
So,
Yes, that's true.
so, yeah.
Some information's
so I
proprietary,
mean,
some.
maybe there's like, and again, so this.
First round, second
Yeah,
round.
first round, second round, like if you're preliminarily like financial, like do you have the, well, also for them, like do they have like the qualifications and the financial stability that we need? And then proceed to bring us a design
Correct.
or something
Right.
like that. So maybe we kind of.
So there's a vetting, so we're vetting them basically before we've got
Well,
everything.
there are builders who could, or entities that could be disqualified based upon the requirements, especially when we get into some of those legal requirements we were talking about before, and the ability to put forth the proper insurance that we want and what their prior history and litigation history has been. There's a number of things that could lead to a disqualification.
So,
Their basic financial.
Yeah.
Well,
so-
if you're doing a HUD loan, for instance, and you're trying to do a draw, right, there's very specific paperwork you have to do. And so, do you have a builder who's done that and is able to do it? Otherwise, you get a project halfway done and you're sitting waiting for the next draw because they don't have the paperwork done to do it. And these are important issues that the public isn't going to care about. They're going to care about what it looks like.
Yeah.
Even though for the most part, they're not going to be able to see them. Right?
so I think that initially maybe what we go to council with is like the idea of how do we structure this as like like initial qualifications and then. That's
But you do have it here about having a selection process with a short list. Right?
So-
You do have that on here.
Because you may only bring in a smaller number to actually interview, but Peter said it's true.
I hope we have it.
We hope we have a list.
Yeah. And I guess like I said, my thing is again, just trying to build in, I think you guys made excellent points about like just the practicality of it. But just really building in this, like the spirit of like transparency and wanting community. You know, we want this to be a project that
Yeah, the last thing we
community-
need is that something happened by administrative fiat and nobody was included and how did that
It's like,
happen?
this is, the point of this
All
is
that
like community housing.
Yeah.
So like, let's put the community in it, you know? Let's
Right,
sort
well,
of
we want people to want to live there and we want people to,
want to be their
Support
neighbor.
it.
yeah, support it and be their neighbors. So I think we have to make it very public, you know, once shortlists and designs are being developed, that here's what we're doing, and we listen to that feedback, even if
Yeah.
it's not, you know, voting on the shingle color.
Correct.
One thing I didn't see is it seems like, are we legally allowed to say it's in perpetuity affordable?
Yes. Yeah.
Because typically there's some time frame. And so, 15-year.
Well, what it would do is how I've seen this done, and we looked at it with like a similar thing that we're looking at, where it's like a 99-year land lease with like a restriction, like a deed restriction on it, is how they, like, that's the legal mechanism that it usually works on. So I guess at the end of the 99 years, you'd have to like redo the land lease and.
Or not, and then you get the improvements.
Right.
Yeah, but or they would,
99,
I was just gonna say that.
Probably worth dealing with them some more.
so we do have
They'll be
some
revoked.
initial language from something that we were working on, I guess like 2 years ago now, where we worked with the land use, actually you referred us to them, a land use attorney who had some really cool,
So by separating the two, you avoid having to.
yeah, basically
That's-
because the builder or the developer doesn't own the land, so you're leasing them the land, so that's your, yeah.
But the thing that's gonna create and potentially shorten our massive list of people running to take this project up
These 10 units.
is
yeah.
that you can't sell it, right? There's no,
Well, so the other thing that I think we would potentially wanna kind of put back in, or I probably wanna have Kylie talk with East Hampton, is that, we might wanna consider what Kate Casey at East Hampton and Chris Heidsmith at Southampton had encouraged us to look at, is like a 20-year buyback of just like basically that the town would have first right of basically the end game would be is hopefully the town will be in a place where the town would buy back the improvements
And then manage them.
and then manage them
And
once they
collect
maybe
them.
were able to, after they
Build
had
that
like,
affordable housing.
yeah, like once they had 5 or 10 years of like kind of learning how it's done, that's how they started in Southampton. They actually had a developer manage it until they could kind of shadow them and figure out what they were doing. So that would be kind of I don't know how that goes in legally, but that was the suggestion that we had got, because you're right, like the developer needs a way out. Like, how do they get out?
Yeah.
Well, they could just close up shop at a certain point, depending on how they are structured. And we have to also consider from our perspective, what happens if the developer after so many years walks away? So that there is a two-pronged piece to that. It's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah,
how
that's
do
what
they
you
get
say.
out? It's if there's an issue and they bolt, how are we handling it?
I mean, I think that there is like kind of the two general ways of kind of thinking, and again, I don't know like the legal language that you would put into this, would be putting in that potentially the town could take it back, or this was another thing that was raised to us, was structuring it so that a nonprofit like CDCLI or the Long Island Housing Partnership
Yeah.
could purchase it out of there, because they wouldn't have the build costs, so that was something that was suggested, and again, I don't know
You
what the
potentially could have an agency that's,
Like a little housing authority.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there are lots of potentials. We
Yeah.
don't know, that's
Yeah.
way down.
no, I'm just thinking if you're asking someone to put, let's say we get a grant but the developer still has to put in $1 million, pick a
Yeah.
number.
That's a lot.
How do we get them liquidity? And presumably that million's not earning a ton, right? It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So how do you get them out? And if I think we need to give some thought to that
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's Stevens' department.
Well, I think that there's the legal piece of it, like how can you legally get them out, and then like what's the financial motivation? I think you're right. I think we need to think about what that end game is.
This is where it gets trickier that we're doing rentals and not purchase. Like if we were building houses that people were buying,
Right, because then.
then it would be different, yeah. But I think that's the tricky thing, because we are talking about rentals.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's complicated, but it's needed.
Yeah.
Okay, project description, which is weird that it's at the end, but that's how they had it structured, so. See, this is all stuff.
Yeah, this is just a big, long list.
This is just a big long list.
I see that 60 to 120%.
Yeah,
mark.
we can we go to the next page? I'm just trying to think of like stuff that we changed to put in here. Yeah, so this will be 80. We put in square footages in here, but I actually realized that I might need to update that with David's model. We just had put in some square footages that were suggested to us. And again, here's the other thing that we can kind of think about. This is like our wish list. The other thing that I would kind of maybe for us to think about, is there any environmental stuff that we want to put in there
Yeah.
additionally?
Got
I
the
thought
dark
as we probably,
sky, which is good.
yeah, I was thinking that we probably, maybe put in some like sewer regulation, like, you know, our dreams system.
So when you.
Well, that's all, that
That
all has to be Suffolk County.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know, but like, yeah, I was just like, you know, is there anything
Yeah.
extra and above, like we want it to be super green, that could be affordable? All right, next one.
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, yes, of course.
On solar.
Yeah, go back.
Solar and EV charging stations are terrific ESG things, and they're money losers. What's to be gained other than, obviously, it's a nicety.
Yeah, it's a nice to have,
What?
Solar.
and EV station.
But I mean, actually, isn't
Reduce
solar,
your utility costs.
yeah, isn't solar actually just more than just a nice?
Yeah, but it's a huge startup
It's
cost.
a massive startup cost.
And the EV, I mean, I guess at some point,
The payback times are slow and they're not,
now,
so.
I have to say though, you know what, when we went and saw the housing in East Hampton, one of the shockers to me was that there was no solar panels on these vast apartment houses in the middle of nowhere with no trees or anything.
Well, it's because it's so expensive.
Right, it's because they don't make any money.
Yeah.
They add to cost. I'm just saying it's tight to begin with.
I mean, you could do it, you could potentially think about, anyway,
I would grant for that. Maybe.
yeah, I mean, but we gotta fund the getting everything in.
Got grants on grants.
Yeah. It's a grant on grants, but so I'm fine with that being like a nice to have. I'm probably personally, I'm more invested in like water quality and like what's going on with the IA systems, but I'm open, like, let's.
I mean, if we had language saying, so these are things we care about.
Yeah.
And we want to, a design that maximizes our wish list, right? If it-
That would be
if it's
good.
something-
Yeah, that's good.
If it's worded that way, rather than, oh, I have to put in solar.
No. Again, expectations for all-inclusive full-service development property management firm.
The one thing I just thought on that
Yeah.
is it seems to me that this is probably, I read it to be a little bit limiting because I would think it might be partnerships that a builder partners with a manager or something.
Yeah.
And so the way I read it, it seemed like
It had to be.
it had to be a single unit rather than saying your RFP would include the firms that would provide these services and the backgrounds on these firms. Because a management firm may be different than the construction.
It's a big team and you should get a primary bidder and,
Well, I mean, they have to, yeah, I mean, that's fine, we can add that in. I think as long as it's strong and like, because your builder is not necessarily good at property management, so that's.
Exactly.
Right.
That's fine, that's a great. And we kind of put in we embrace inclusive and universal design and net zero energy facilities. We encourage, design build family of documents. But again, like maybe moving some of that language to that other page, like this is, like a nice to have.
And should there be wording on women and minority business?
Yeah.
Always,
Because
yeah.
Oh, that was one of the ones I had in mind.
Yeah, should always be that. That's part of it.
Opportunity costs.
Entrants are required to submit conceptual graphic representation.
you can get better financing if you.
Right.
Yeah. Next. This is all the qualifications. Bill has a lot of feelings about insurance. We'll put those in here. I'm sure Kylie has lots of things to say. Next. Headline. Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, and then, this is just the.
The pick.
Imagine, schematic drawings and engineering stuff here.
That was really great, you guys.
It's all Brandon.
Bran, this is really great.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all East Hampton and just putting it together, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's terrific.
Well, great.
Yeah, I feel like we're the pieces are starting to come
They're
together.
like really great presentations today.
I think, you know,
Housing,
we're clarifying.
this thing.
Yeah. Okay, oh my God, you guys, it's 8:30, we're gonna make it, we're gonna do it. Okay, so we got notes, I feel like, we'll make some notes on it and then we can get this to Kylie and Matt Sherman next week. I'll just give a really quick update. So I just got an update this morning. So just to remind everybody, the maximum, if we did a maximum grant, we have $2 million. So that means it would be at the maximum grant at 16. This morning I talked to CDC-LI. We have 14 through the process.
Wow, that's
Really?
great.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I have another 4 cooking. I will tell you that we do think we potentially we've gone and had somebody do site visits on the first 14. We do potentially have 2 that might have to come out because of some zoning issues. That still means that we have 12.
Fantastic.
Another 4.
It's so great.
I would like to tell you that I talked to someone from Southampton. Does anyone like to guess how many Southampton has? And not that I'm competitive, but I am.
5, 8.
4.
Lower.
What?
There you go.
1. Really? They don't wanna.
Wow.
I don't want
They
you
know
to
that they can get a.
Shelter Island for the
Because
win.
They don't have you.
Well, they don't have us. is what they don't have. So, I mean, that's pretty
That's
exciting.
amazing.
So again,
Great.
16. So honestly, even with those 2 dropping out,
That could be all,
we
right?
might have
Yeah.
we might have a full round by the end of September.
Which was the goal, which is what.
Well, we know I needed 4 by the end of
Well,
September.
we needed 16 in 2 years.
Yeah, in 2 years.
I didn't realize that.
The other exciting part, you guys,
Yeah.
if we have, I mean, I think we're going to be dangerously close to the
Okay.
limit at the end of September. So I did talk with the executive director of CDC-LI, and she believes that she knows that there's more funding available in New York. And so it's our intention to go back to the state of New York, because we also have, a bunch of people who didn't make it through or, are still in the application process to go back for a second round. The other thing that we've been working on kind of concurrently is just getting clarification on the community housing license, which would make potentially some of the things that we just initially rejected anything where we're like, oh, there's anything weird, right? Like that we just threw them out because we're just like, we're just not even going to deal with it. But if we can get clarification on the community housing license,
Okay.
which we are in the middle of, that means that we potentially even have some from these first rounds that were taken out that we could put back in. So I can't even tell you how excited I am.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
So great. Wow. Great.
So I'll keep you guys posted on that.
Yes.
But basically, they canceled our meeting because we have them so busy with applications. There's like, can I just send you a list? I was like, yeah, that's fine. Totally fine.
Wow.
Amazing. Mark. You.
So some of you may have a list of
Yes.
parcels in here. This is sort of what I've been able to, pare down from all the lots on the island. And this is just cutting by 3 criteria. One is that it's outside the nearshore overlay. The other is that it's got a Shelter Island primary owner address. And the final one is that it is 75% or larger than the minimum lot size for the zoning. And that's, I've added a ratio of that. That's the last column in this. It's like, so, that it's either 4.9 times and so on. So these all meet that. That's it though. There are so many other considerations that I didn't even go through. I mean, I actually went in and all the Shelter Island town properties appeared on here, or a number of them did. I just deleted those. But, one glaring thing that came up is, you know, depending on how we want to use this, I mean, my thought was that these were for
Yeah.
this funding, the grant money, right?
Yeah.
Does an LLC qualify? There's a lot of LLC
Yeah, I
owned.
know.
And
Yeah.
so you could get, I don't know, probably 100, you know, maybe will be pulled out of that. The other that I've been struggling just to like technically figure out how to do the analysis, I'm running into problems, is teasing out like how much, what's the lot coverage already?
Right.
I have building layers and whatnot. I think I've got a workaround for that, but it doesn't show driveways, for example. So is there an estimate that we could just sort of make? Double the building size? Is that equal? You know, is that a good enough representation for a first run on lot coverage? You
I don't
know?
think driveways count as lot coverage.
I mean, if it's asphalt or if it's
I don't think so.
patios, not at all?
No, I think it's
It's
just
not like
like
an
patio,
impermeable
pool,
surface?
house, guest house.
I think I'd add a buffering anyway, because I don't know.
Yeah,
if they-
because you could have a permeable driveway or a asphalt.
Right. Okay, so LLCs are a no.
Can I just, why is an LLC a no?
Well, an LLC is a no, well, hold on. An LLC is a no for the ADU plus one.
ADU, right, yes.
It's funding, but it could potentially be, now that we're getting clarity on the
With a
community
special
housing
exemption.
license.
Right.
It could, like, as long as it was outside of the near shore overlay, it could be, an LLC would be considered, I mean, I'd have to reread the code, but I think anyway, I'd have to reread the code, but
I just asked, why is an LLC exempted from the grant money?
you
General principle?
it's because it's not the grant money is for individuals, not for businesses. Is,
Restrictions as well.
pardon?
And there's an income restrictions.
There's income restrictions.
But an LLC could be broke, you know, and not make.
Right, no, but-
LLCs might not make money, yeah.
I guess the
Yeah.
way that the grant was as.
Right,
as
I'm not gonna-
explained to me is for individuals.
Right, fine.
I just think, well, there's nothing we can do about it, but
Yeah.
I mean, more and more people are gonna be buying houses in LLCs just for practicality.
No, I mean,
80% are,
Yes.
that come through.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the trend, so the trend is not our friend, but we.
well, but here's the thing is this,
16 out of-
but let's also think about there's income restrictions for people with the ADU plus one grants, and are
Yeah.
those people buying houses in LLCs? I think that those are
Right,
those are
Maybe that's our-
potentially two different situations, you know what I mean?
that's
Like
our
maybe-
income filter right there.
Yeah, our income filter is like, if you're in. But the LLCs could potentially be, if they were zoned right, could potentially be, you know,
Right,
community housing license, that would be fine.
yeah.
Yeah, and they might have the funds to do it without the grant money, so, right?
There's two other things that immediately come to three.
It's the system.
Is there anything, maybe you can answer, anything in the town, like GIS or assessment information that's associated with, that indicates whether there's an ADU already?
Talk to the assessors.
Okay.
Yes.
Their database, we have too many databases in town.
Well, yeah, see, and I don't think they're all together, but, okay.
I will tell you that specific question came up during the housing plan.
Mhm.
And people were like, how do you, and basically I will just tell you that we don't have the records. And when I kind of pressed at the building department and the assessor, and basically it was just because there's been so much illegal work done
Right,
and the records are just not up to date.
it's just even the registered ones, because in here, certainly a great number of them have them.
Yeah,
But,
the assessor will have some of them and the
yeah.
building department will have some of them. And
oh,
that is a big
I see,
opportunity for us to put that together,
Okay.
but
yeah.
it's more time than I have.
Maybe we can filter out by property class, like I see single-family residents and a lot of others. If you guys know of some of these that are
Peter.
well, generally not applicable here, I mean, cemetery, obviously.
Cemetery, that's the only one I can
But,
get.
okay,
I mean,
horse farm, I mean, but does that mean that's all it can be, or is it?
Usually, yes, it's been, they've given up the development rights.
Okay, so that indicates, I'll go with residences.
And they reserve vacant land. I don't know,
Oh,
What's
yeah.
vacant with improvement?
that means it's a house.
Okay.
Okay, but vacant, does that mean that it is?
Well, improvement, let's take Shelter Island Racket Club, vacant
Yeah.
property, it's the tennis club on
Oh, yeah.
Nantucket
Yeah.
Village. So that would be it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so some of these are easy. And then setbacks, I mean, that's one of these things that, like, I can get that, I can get, like, what, do you need a certain amount of area that's within the setback? Septic and whatnot,
That's what the ratio is for.
the ratio sort of gives you that buffer, or?
The setback is like 30 feet from the front. 10 on
30,
the
10,
side.
10, and 10.
Oh, so it's not.
Yeah.
It's
There
not that
are
big.
3 different setback zones.
Great.
C and B are the same, A and double A.
Yeah. So the ratio is, you think?
I think the ratio is talking about the setback.
Okay, so, even if we're not that concerned, there's hundreds, 300 something properties here. And, looking at the list, if we just look at the ones that are, 1.5 times this, 1.4 times the minimum lot size, that still gives us 60 or 80 properties to consider.
Yeah.
That, that's a manageable number of properties for somebody like you, Peter, to go through and say, no, now.
Well, you also see C zone, and then A, which is 1 acre.
Yeah.
Double A, 2 acre.
Right.
However,
Well, these are all based on the amount, the minimum amounts.
right, but you have to understand A, a lot of A is in double A zone that reverts to A. Hay Beach
Hay
is
Beach,
double
okay.
A zone,
Yeah.
but it's reverts to 1 acre.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
It was, let's say Gardner's Bay Country Club gets sold.
Yeah,
It would be 2 acres.
2 acres, right, okay.
But Hay Beach was subdivided before
Right,
they redid the zoning. So if there's a 4 acre parcel vacant in Hay Beach area,
yeah,
it would be 2 acres.
I got you.
But most of the lots are 1 acre.
Right, okay, so, but
There's
as
a lot
they
of
sit
that on Shelter
now,
Island.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if
It's very confusing.
as it is now, this is the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I guess they could be subdivided technically, I mean, I just, there aren't a lot of properties that it seems like you could make a subdivision in,
There actually are, but it's hard.
yeah,
But now, once you reduce this,
Yeah.
your next asset, reducing it,
yeah.
then what are we gonna do?
Well, I don't know, I mean, this is,
This is.
write a letter, a form letter to these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I mean, I
and
think-
say, hey, have you ever wanted to do this?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
Said,
think the
finally
interesting
have
thing
another
is, as we were
$100,000.
kind of talking about they were talking about the comprehensive plan of just, the housing chapters, and like make information available.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe what we could do is we could just be proactive of just like, hey, I mean, obviously, it's every homeowner's prerogative to do what they want to do, but they
Yeah.
might not know about community housing license, or they might not know about other funding sources. And so maybe what we could do is just be proactive in letting them know, like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
there's this stuff out here. If you have any questions, we'd love to help you. They can
Right.
throw it in their fire, or they can call us, but they might not know unless we reach out. And I think
Yeah.
that would, and especially if we end up with like a second round or something like that,
Yeah,
it would be a good place to target. I mean, that's just great to know.
yeah.
Amazing. So much work got done in this, between this this is like crazy. I'm gonna move on to the next one because I'm trying to meet our 9 o'clock goal. Fund balance report. So that big sale went through. And so we moved our fund to a high yield savings account because of course we did. And we have 101 in there. So we had a deposit of
Amazing.
67,000. So,
And I can say within probably 60 days, there'll be another big one of, add another 30,000 plus to that.
Wow.
so we'll
Nice.
just keep,
So this is actually a bit, I'm shocked how fast this went up.
yeah. I mean.
For all the naysayers out there that,
All right.
we almost didn't get this. What did we win it by?
By
10?
8,
8 or
15.
10?
9.
8 votes.
So it's 9, whatever.
3 different numbers.
They're all low.
Yeah, they were all really low.
I was just final
And
yeah.
this only started in April.
Yeah,
So this, I'm shocked at how much money is in
Yeah.
here. I
Well,
think
we know
this
that-
is
yeah.
great.
so it's pretty, I mean, obviously, looking at the build costs that we're talking about, we're gonna need a lot more, but
No,
Yeah,
but
we-
this
we
is a
can-
good start.
this is a good start. We can get somewhere. So that's our fund balance. I'll keep you guys updated every month. Like I said, we moved it to a high yield savings account.
What company is this, New York class? It's a bank or something?
We can talk about the town, I don't.
New York, the town and New
It's
York
like-
State do it.
Like,
We don't have,
yeah,
we can't just,
We don't just.
yeah, we don't just bank.
regular
It's not like a dime, yeah.
Got it.
And,
Okay,
okay,
click.
old business.
I had that survey idea, and I think I'm just gonna let that go. Just worry that much.
Idea. What's your survey?
To kind of like find out how much people would actually,
Oh,
what they thought was an affordable rent.
Oh.
Survey on
That's a good
rent?
survey.
Well, we could keep thinking about it.
What are you talking about? That's-
I actually spoke to a couple of people about the HUD rental rate versus what, I was talking about, and I think they were surprised at how high the HUD rate is relative to what their expectations were. So I'm not sure it's not a bad idea, because
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, is I feel like it's kind of hand in hand, because like, honestly, if we're thinking about what the rental rate is, it's probably for those 10 properties, but if we got other, like, for me, it's like all connected, but if you could get the other funding, then you could bring the rents down. So it's just
Yeah.
like, until you get the other funding, it's just an academic argument.
The reason I really wanted to
Yeah.
do it is because looking at all these other communities, East Hampton did this, they're like, here's our affordable housing, these people are working in our community at, these industries.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's part and parcel with saying, what industries do you work in? And finding out like what's affordable for the people in our community. So
No, I think,
If you worked at the IGA or you were a teacher or whatever, right?
Ferry, no, it's,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's
the ferry.
important. Let's keep thinking about it.
Any business.
all of those things.
New business, we have the ethics code acknowledgement.
We have to sign this.
Everybody please, be ethical,
Signed.
please be ethical, read the code.
You're supposed to read it before signing.
Yeah, I know
I read it.
everyone at
I read
this
it.
table read it.
Was out online.
I actually think I put this in already. Okay, so we got a little bit of time, and I just wanted to see, did anybody have,
Julie Lane, is
Julie?
she still on?
or anybody here, does anybody have any questions for us? that we can answer? I know we went over a lot of stuff tonight. Anybody?
The only question I have is, can we get those figures again on the amount that's come in through the CPF money?
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, do you want, I can, you want, so,
Balance.
you want the balance or how much came in?
Balance.
Okay, 101,000,
163,7.
thank you. Peter.
Terrific. Thank you.
You wouldn't know.
I can read that, I can't see over
Yeah,
there.
I was like, you wouldn't know I was an accountant. Jeez Louise. Any other questions?
Can we use the interest income for a margarita machine?
For what?
For a margarita machine at meetings?
Or an espresso machine?
Either or, an espresso margarita machine?
I just had no great espresso martinis.
Okay.
Marshall,
Well, let's work out what beverage it's gonna go, and then let's see if we can figure out the funding. So we'll table that to the next meeting. All right, if we don't have anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.